There are some places on Earth that are truly sacred. This is one of them. This is Omaha Beach on the Normandy coast of France. At dawn on June 6, 1944, the liberation of Europe began here. Thousands of young Americans gave their lives on this beach so that the generations that followed could walk free. The invasion was codenamed Operation Overlord, a truly massive operation that would initially involve aerial and naval bombardment on a scale never before seen, and the landing of 5 Allied infantry and 3 airborne divisions. They would punch holes in the German coastal defenses and establish the beachheads that would ultimately allow 2.5 million men and billions of tons of material to take the war to the heart of Germany. One of the best ways to see the principal locations is to take a small group tour like the one offered by Raoul Klinkhammer, owner of Victory Tours. Our tour began in the British and Canadian sector near Gold Beach at the village of Armage. Within hours of the area being secured, construction of 2 artificial harbors, codenamed Mulberries, began. The one at Armage was dubbed Port Winston in honor of Britain's wartime leader, Sir Winston Churchill, who is credited with coming up with the idea. An estimated 17,000 troops worked round the clock to complete the project. First, ships were sunk to create a breakwater. Then large concrete casements called phoenixes were towed into position and sunk. Engineers then constructed floating roadways to the shore to offload troops and material. Within days, the harbors were operational, and despite suffering heavy damage from storms a few weeks after the invasion, they continued to function until commercial ports could be captured. 10 miles west of Armage was the first American beach, codenamed Omaha. While most things had gone well elsewhere, at Omaha, that was not the case. The U.S. Army's 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions, both combat-tested in North Africa and Sicily, were mauled.
What could go wrong went wrong. It was all just bad luck. Now, you've seen the first 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan. Now, when I asked the veterans here, was it like the first 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan, sir? You know what they say?
Worse.
Not worse. They say, I don't know, because I had one thing in mind, survival. Get the hell out of here. Dragging half a body behind you as you see the movie. I haven't seen it, they said. Must have been like that. But I just wanted to get away from bloody Omaha. Huh?
An estimated 3,000 men were killed in action, and at least that many were wounded. But some estimate the count was actually much higher. Walking along the beach today, you sense their presence and begin to imagine the terror they must have experienced. From the beach, you can walk to the top of the bluff to the American Cemetery, the final resting place for many who died on Omaha Beach that day, and many others killed in the months that followed.
This is the largest American World War II cemetery that we have in France. It's 172.5 acres in extent, and it was completed 11 years after the war, 1956. And they started all this here then in 1948. And this American World War II cemetery has 9,387 crosses, or for those with the Jewish faith, the Star of David.
There are 31 pairs of brothers buried here, including the Nyland brothers, who were the inspiration for the movie Saving Private Ryan.
The more important is the true story what Saving Private Ryan is based on. And it's based upon the 4 Nyland brothers. Preston, Robert and Fritz. These 3 brothers landed in Normandy. And the 4th brother, Edward, was an aircrew member in the Pacific. Robert got killed June 6, close to St. Mary-Glise. Preston was killed the next day in Utah Beach. And in the same week, Edward in the Pacific was missing. Mama received 3 telegrams. Well, then the American Army, government, whatever, decided to send the only survivor home. But there was no need for a search party, as they do in Saving Private Ryan. He was lost for 8 days, but he actually just walked in, and the chaplain told him what had happened, and they were going to send him home because of. But he didn't want to go home. He wanted to stay with his buddies. So the president had to send him a letter, order him to come back to the United States. And after the war, it appeared that Edward in the Pacific had been a prisoner of war in Burma. But a year after the war, he came home safely also. So out of the 4 boys, Mama had the 2 boys back.
General Theodore Roosevelt Jr., who led troops onto Utah Beach, and his brother, who was killed in World War I, are also buried here. Roosevelt, who died in July of a heart attack, was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. Cemetery workers help families locate the graves of loved ones and will accompany them to the gravesite with a bucket of sand from the beach, which they rub into the engraved markings on the stone, making them stand out until the rain washes them away. About 8 miles west of Omaha Beach is Pointe du Hoc, the Point of the Hook, considered to be one of the most strategically important targets along the invasion beaches. A German artillery battery on the point could fire 155mm shells at Omaha and Utah beaches and at the hundreds of ships that were part of the invasion armada. There was no beach to storm, just 100-foot sheer cliffs. It required special tactics and special men.
So they formed a special elite group to do the job, and those were the Rangers. And the 2nd Ranger Battalion, 225 men, under the command of Colonel James Rudder, they had to do the job. Now let me tell you that due to bad navigation, bad communication, bad coordination, bad weather, bad luck, bad everything, the 225 Rangers did not come to La Pointe du Hoc, they all went to Pointe de la Percée. Now, before no one think that they were going the wrong way, heading the right way and all that, yeah, they had lost 40 minutes. But that stopped the bombardments at 6:30, so the Germans also had 40 minutes to recover from the bombardments and come up front and see what was going on. Now coming from Pointe de la Percée, the Rangers only scaled the cliffs at this side. They did not go around. And the only thing the Germans had to do out there now was just throw their hand grenades down and shoot them on the wall like flies. By scaling these cliffs out there, Rudder already lost 30 to 40 men. But still, after some real fierce fighting and after they gained some terrain, then the Rangers had the biggest surprise of their lives. Because then they noticed that the guns were not in the bunkers. The guns were not even in the rings, as I told you. The guns were not here at all. No guns. As I told you over there, this whole area here was bombed for over a month, for 24 hours a day. Now when you got your guns in the open, yeah, one day they're going to be hit for sure. How come intelligence did not know that the guns were not here? Because the Germans were smart enough to have some tree trunks or telephone poles sticking out from under the nets. It just looked like guns.
Of the 225 Rangers who went up the cliffs, 135 were killed or wounded. Rangers also played a critical role at Omaha Beach. When the Ranger reinforcements could not make contact with their comrades at Pointe du Hoc, they were redirected to land at Omaha. They arrived later in the morning at just the right time to help get to the top of the bluffs and begin flanking the German positions. Erosion has caused some of the fortifications to fall into the sea. Efforts are now being made to shore up bunkers closest to the cliffs. The 2nd American Beach was codenamed Utah. The mission was given to the 4th Infantry Division. Unlike Omaha, almost everything that could go right did, and even the things that went wrong proved to be an advantage. Aerial and naval bombardment was on target. The area was lightly defended, and most of the German troops were conscripted from Russia and East European countries conquered by the Nazis. They were more than happy to surrender. Approximately 200 Americans were killed taking Utah Beach. Hours before the beach landings in the American sector, paratroopers from the 101st and 82nd Airborne Divisions were dropped behind enemy lines in the rolling countryside. Their mission was to keep German reinforcements from reaching the beaches. Many of the troops were dropped far from their drop zones and were scattered throughout the countryside called the bocage. Small unit action predominated with countless acts of heroism that will never be known. We stopped at a church in the village of Angeville that played a small but memorable role. 2 young medics from the 101st Airborne, Robert Wright and Kenneth Moore, set up a field station, treating German civilians as well as American casualties. Bloodstains can still be seen on the pews. Today, stained glass windows commemorate the medics and the Screaming Eagles. 5 miles north of Angeville is the village of St. Mary Glees. The 82nd Airborne took the town. Memories are preserved in the village, including a paratrooper whose chute was caught in the church steeple. This church also has windows dedicated to the Americans. The village is home to the Airborne Museum. Seeing the sights of the D-Day invasion, especially Omaha Beach and the American Cemetery, are awe-inspiring. Many of the tours, like the Victory Tour, originate in the beautiful town of Bayeux, about 2 hours from Paris by train. It's ideal to stay overnight in Bayeux, but it's possible to take the early and late trains and do it all in one day. Advanced reservations are highly recommended. Normandy and the D-Day invasion beaches are well worth taking time to travel.